Welcome to the Mile High Hoops podcast. I am Jake Shapiro, and we are chatting Denver Nuggets basketball like always on this show. And today I want to know if you believe that the recent Nuggets hot streak was a mirage, because now the Denver Nuggets have lost 2 games in a row. One of them on Saturday afternoon. And when's the last time the Nuggets have won one of those Saturday afternoon primetime games? I can't even wrap my head around those, right? It feels like they're always losing those recently. To the Minnesota Timberwolves, the team who knocked them out in the playoffs last year, made that unbelievable comeback in a Game 7 in Denver. Reshaped team, much worse this year, still has the physicality, still has the Denver Nuggets number. Then a couple days later, last night in Chicago, against a very subpar Bulls team. The kids would call it mid. Zach LaVine shows you late in that game exactly why you might want to trade for him, as the Bulls just blitz the Nuggets from three. Nuggets barely scored any threes comparatively to the Bulls. I'm not sure if it was the fact that the Bulls made 24 threes or the Nuggets only made 6 threes. That was the bigger problem. It's an issue we've talked about on this podcast a lot. I think the 24 threes allowed to the lousy Chicago Bulls, probably the bigger issue in my mind. At least my mind. But when you're letting LaVine, Dusomo, Ball, and Dalen Terry all shoot more than 3 threes, and Lonzo Ball as well. I missed that one. That's rough. And then you had a couple guys make multiple shots and a couple guys make 1 threes as well. Meanwhile, the Denver Nuggets out here just having Michael Porter Jr. huck up threes at the end of the game as desperation heaves. He's one of 2 guys in yesterday's game with Christian Braun who actually hits 2 shots from beyond the arc. And again, not a good Bulls team. And you looked at this road trip going into it going, all right, Minnesota's playing poorly. You can maybe squeak that one out, get some payback on that game earlier this season. The Bulls stink. The Knicks are playing good basketball, but maybe you get payback on them putting 145 up on Paul Arena on you. The Sixers, everyone's hurt. Hornets, again, a subpar team. You're thinking maybe you go 4-1 on this road trip. Now you start at 0-2 and you're trying to salvage it at 3-2. In my mind, against the tougher part of it, because you've got the Knicks, who are the best team on the road trip on Wednesday, and you've got 3 games in 4 nights, Friday, Saturday, back-to-back, Philly, Charlotte. Tough spot. So if you look back at that Nuggets win streak that they just had, over the month of, well, really since December 8th, when they finally broke that snap of win 1, lose 1, win 1, lose 1. They beat the Hawks after that horrific loss to the Wizards. Go on a 3-game win streak. It's Hawks, Clippers, and Kings they beat. Okay? So if you pull up the NBA standings and you see where teams are in the NBA standings, those 3 teams, the Hawks, are going to make the playoffs. Probably a play-in team, but they're going to make a playoffs. I'm more focused in on the West Coast, especially because these teams are of better quality. Clippers are a playoff team as of today. I don't think anyone really is fearing the Clippers, but Clippers are a playoff team. The Kings are a play-in team. That was before they fired their head coach. They've been much better since, but you win that game. You lose to the Blazers, who stink. The Pelicans you beat in overtime, who stink. The Suns you split with, and the Suns are currently a playoff play-in team. They're on the 8 seed line. They're having a much worse season than people think. They split with the Suns. The Cavs, good team. You get crushed by them. Detroit, they're having a resurgent year, but again, East Coast team, you win. Utah's bad, win. Atlanta, we talked about, win. You split with the Spurs, who might sneak their way into the play-in situation, depending on what happens in Sacramento. Then you've got Boston, you get killed by, good team. Clippers, you beat again. Nets, you beat again, bad team. Mavericks, you take both games from them, but those games come without Luka Doncic, and one of them came without Kyrie Irving. You lose to the Houston Rockets, who are the best team so far that we've talked about. You beat the Heat, who stink right now. You beat the Magic, who are without half their roster. You beat the Sixers, who are without half their roster. And you beat the Kings, who are, again, playing better ball, but a subpar team on the year. So In that stretch, the only West Coast team you played that was any sort of good was Houston. Clippers, I guess, if you want to make the case. I don't think anyone's really fearing them, but obviously a better team. And then you lose to the Cavs and Celtics, who we all know are good. You play the Knicks here coming up. And again, you don't face one of these good teams, quote unquote, in the West. Again, you've Sacramento and Phoenix in March. Like, this is where I'm going already. Los Angeles and Washington on your homestands. The next really good team that the Nuggets face from the West Coast is March 9th and March 10th in Oklahoma City, a back-to-back. So we're talking about 6 weeks before the Denver Nuggets play a game that has any real bearing on what might happen and tell us how the West is going to shape out, right? And then it gets real because it's Oklahoma City, Minnesota, Lakers, Warriors stink, Lakers stink, Rockets, Timberwolves, and you've got the Kings, Grizzlies, Rockets to end your season. But we're already talking about March. We're not even close to there yet. We've got a whole month of February to dredge through. And part of me wonders right now if the Nuggets are going through their annual lull. It normally happens during the All-Star break. Maybe it's happening a little bit earlier this season just because of the way this schedule has shaped out. But who the Nuggets have played here and who they've beaten, it does not lend me to believe that they are on that contender tier with the Cavaliers and with the Thunder. You can make a case for the Rockets as well and the Knicks, like some teams that got to figure some stuff out. I don't even know if the Nuggets are on that second tier with that level of team. They look like they were for a second there. But that's what I'm concerned with. In the issues that we see with the Nuggets when they're not playing well, they pop up all the time, right? It's that 3-point variance that we just chatted about. But in that Minnesota game, you're also seeing why it's probably not a great idea to start Russell Westbrook in the playoffs. Against Chicago last night, he couldn't guard anyone. Against Minnesota, he's too small on the floor. I'm not mad at Russ. Russ has been fantastic. I'm mad at the positions the Nuggets sometimes are forced to put him in because of the situations they've caused themselves. If only KCP were here instead of Dario Saric. Had that conversation. So I'm not saying the Nuggets' hot streak in the month of January so far has been a mirage per se. I think it's told us that they're maybe a better team than we thought they were in December, right? In December, we're like, oh, this team's kind of like a play-in, a little 6-seedy. I think we know that the Nuggets are probably the third or fourth best team in the West throughout the course of the regular season. And I still like them better than everyone but Oklahoma City to come out the West. You know, I fear Dallas. I fear San Antonio because of Wemby. And I fear Memphis if Ja's healthy. There's some teams I fear, probably missing one or two, that the Nuggets could play in the playoffs. Obviously, Minnesota. But the point is, when the Nuggets are hitting their stride, they're still the second best team in the West. And if the right injuries happen in front of them, they could come out of the West. If the right situations in terms of like matchups with the other teams, aka Oklahoma City runs into Dallas, who just has their number, maybe the Nuggets come out of the West. As fun it is to look over at the left and right, and I was doing a lot of it the last 2 years because we knew the Nuggets were so good, I think the biggest thing for the Nuggets is just simply playing to their level. It's not about the other teams at this point. It's can the Nuggets get themselves and work themselves into a consistent level. And we saw that a little bit over the month of January thus far. It just happened to be against a lot of bad teams. So I don't know who this team is. It says a lot that you can take care of business against some bad teams because earlier this season, we've seen you lose to Portland and Washington. You rattled off a lot of wins against mid teams. In the same sense, there are things that constantly get exposed by the best teams in the league when they face the Nuggets. It's the three-point shooting. It's the rebounding. It's the size when Aaron Gordon isn't on the floor. And a lot of this stinks, right? Because the best teams the Nuggets have run into this season, for the most part, AG wasn't healthy for those games. So it's still kind of hard to judge. But I think I'm not at belief yet. It's still a little bit of an intrusive thought. I've always been the AG should be the starter guy, but I think it might be time to end that experiment with Russ in the starting lineup if AG is healthy, or whenever AG can play 30 minutes a night. It's time to make that change. It was nice while it lasted. Get the bench some chemistry, get some punch off the bench, but I'm more concerned with winning the 32 minutes Nikola Jokic is on the floor by a lot than stressing him out any more than he needs to be stressed, because you end up with games like the last two where Jokic just didn't look interested on Saturday, and in the second half last night, there was no defense to be played. I need to make life easier on my superstar when he's on the floor, and then focus on when he's not on the floor, because I think the first one will have a little bit more of a tangible benefit. I'd rather him play more minutes easier than fewer minutes harder, if that makes sense. At least that's my take on it. Anyway, trade deadline is shockingly close. 9 days away, if I did the math correctly. It's next Thursday, right after we do this podcast. So we will do a podcast on everything that happens with the Nuggets and everything that happens with the team around them on Thursday as a recap. A week from Thursday, we will do a trade deadline preview podcast in the coming days. So make sure you like, subscribe, and comment on our YouTube page. Comment on the YouTube page who you want to see the Nuggets pick up, or what position you want to see them target. I'm genuinely interested, because you can go a couple different ways with this. Do you want guard depth? Do you want wing depth? Do you want a backup center? Do you want them to trade Porter? I don't know. It's your comment. I'm Jake Shapiro. You can follow me on all my social medias. Very pumped up for this Nuggets-Knicks game tomorrow. We will talk about that on Thursday's podcast.